You're listening to the Good Food CFO podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Delavan, and with us, as always, is our producer, Chelsea Steer. Hey, Chelsea.
Hey, Sarah.
Guess what?
What?
I am talking to a food industry icon today in this episode.
That is so exciting.
I know I'm a little bit embarrassed because as soon as we recorded the episode, I took to Instagram and I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I interviewed a celebrity today for the podcast. And the guests that came in for who I interviewed were amazing. We're talking like Martha Stewart, Jennifer Garner, Christina Tosi. And I then went back to Instagram and I said, I appreciate how much confidence y'all have in the Good Food CFO podcast. And maybe we can begin manifesting, some of these guests onto the show. But I had to kind of, give a little bit more direction. This food industry icon is someone who created a business, the first of its kind here in the US in the mid 80s. And as a buyer, someone who worked in the food industry sourcing ingredients, when it came into our inbox that she was interested in being on the show, we jumped right on it. So I'm not going to give any more away, before we get a little bit further into the episode, but needless to say, I am excited. I was excited to talk to her, and I'm super excited for everybody to hear the episode today.
Yeah. And like you said, we'll tease that out a little bit longer. So, Sarah, to get things going today, I'd love to start with a review.
Love that.
How does that sound? Okay, good. Okay, now I say review, but what I actually mean, Sarah, is a comment from YouTube. Okay. This comment was actually on our very recent episode that we did about economic uncertainty, where we were talking about, cost rising and tariffs and stuff like that. And it's from Locke Jeranek. And they said, your videos and tools available on your website are invaluable. I'm having to go back to square one with my business, down to what products I'm going to sell and how I'm going to sell it. Without you, I'm not sure where I'd turn to gain confidence and truly find the answers through the real numbers.
Wow. Well, first and foremost, thank you, Locke, for commenting on YouTube, for giving us feedback, because it, as I've said before, means so much to us and is so valuable to the work that we're doing. And I'm also just so grateful that the tools are helpful. They're meant to be. And so the fact that founders can take them, use them, and gain confidence, that's exactly what we want to be happening. And so again, thank you for the comment, for the feedback. I just can't say enough.
Yeah. And Sarah, like you already have said, it's comments like this, especially here on YouTube, that are helping us to get to that big, hairy goal of ours of reaching 1 million food founders. Yeah. And, I know that we've shared here that we want to get that started by reaching 500 subscribers here on YouTube. Yep. But it's not just subscribers, it's comments, it's likes, it's sharing this video. All of that is going to help us reach our goal. So I just want to say again, Locke, thanks so much for your comment.
Yeah.
And Sarah, there's another reason I actually wanted to share this comment here on this episode today. It's been on my mind all afternoon. We had our Baba Yacht member event, our quarterly event this afternoon. And as part of that event, we did hold an Ask Me Anything. And I think it was basically every question that came from our founders today had to do with rising costs, tariffs, how do they reprice their products? How should they, strategize through this economic uncertainty or downturn or whatever you want to call it? And that tells me, not only from this comment on our very recent YouTube episode, but then also hearing the founders today that they're feeling it. This is what is on their minds.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think on the consumer end, I don't know that the impact of tariffs that small brands in particular are feeling right now is really being felt just yet, right? Not as much as the founders are feeling it, when they're literally just seeing the costs rising of things they need to buy, knowing that costs are rising and like, I don't need to buy it right now, but should I buy it now? Should I not? Like, there's all of this anxiety. And you hit on a key word, the strategy. What is the strategy for making it through this time? And as we said in the episode on tariffs and economic uncertainty, we don't want anyone to just shelter in place and just try to survive this, right? It's like, what can you do? How can you think about your business? How can you modify your business, strengthen your cash, flow and your cash situation now so that you can endure and potentially thrive in this economic time. And I'll go ahead and announce our guest today because I think she provides a lot of valuable insights as a founder who's been in business for over 40 years, right? Ariane Daguin. I pronounced her last name wrong and I apologize. She has such a beautiful French accent. I cannot do it justice, but she's the founder of D'Artagnan. And so as someone who has worked in the food industry, who's been a buyer, had been a buyer for years, who also worked in restaurants, I'm so familiar with D'Artagnan. I'm familiar with Ariane and the work that she has done. She pioneered a specialty meat company, the first of its kind, bringing foie gras and sustainably raised meats to the American market before anyone else. And through this episode, she's not only sharing her journey, but she's also sharing insights into what it's like, right, to be in business for so long. And I'm really excited for people to hear about that.
Yeah. And I think you'll also hear what it was like coming up. She almost called it like coming up with a class, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of culinary, chefs and people in the food industry, that they were all almost like friends, right?
Yeah.
Coming up together, and what that community did for her and her business,
Yeah.
I think is really special.
Yeah. And for people who aren't familiar, and we'll go into it obviously in the episode, but Ariane is a French American entrepreneur. She's an author and she's literally a culinary pioneer who's renowned for her contributions to the gourmet food industry and sustainable farming. As I mentioned, she's the founder, really the co-founder of D'Artagnan. As I said, the pioneering specialty meat company that she built from just $15,000 into an industry defining business over 4 decades. She talks about her upbringing in Gascony, France, where they live to eat, not eat to live. And as she was talking about that, I was like, I'm from Scranton, Pennsylvania, and I feel like I grew up the same way. My family definitely lived to eat. But her father was a Michelin-starred chef. She was surrounded by food, this high quality food, from her childhood, and identified a gap in the market, right? Identified a need and created a solution for it. And I think so many things that are going to resonate with founders listening today is her commitment to quality and sustainability, the pressures to grow fast and how she dealt with those and what that ultimately looked like. Toward the end of her business, she did recently sell D'Artagnan. She talks about, the economic ups and downs, right? As we kind of like teased a moment ago, over the course of 40 years, there are lots of ups and there are lots of downs. Just think back the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Right. And everything that's happened with our economy. And then she also talks about mentorship and giving back. And one of the reasons, that she wanted to be on the podcast was to speak to founders, to give information that she didn't have when she started, to, inspire, to connect. So she's really in a place of giving. And she has started a new farm, new business with her daughter, which is really, really sweet to hear about.
Yeah. And I have to say that after I listened to the episode, all the things that you talked about, right? Starting her business with $15,000, running it for 40 years, deliberately controlling growth, right? So that she could maintain those standards, which also meant saying no to certain opportunities, right?
Yeah.
All of that made me kind of sit up and go, wait a second, did we just do a Baba Yacht episode?
You know what? We did. We really did. I think you're right.
So yeah, I really loved listening to it. And I think that all of our founders out there will love listening to it as well.
I hope so. I hope so. You ready to get to it?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Hey there, it's Sarah. If you're enjoying the podcast, I want to invite you to become a Baba Yacht member. It stands for Building a Business on Your Own Terms, and your membership directly supports the continued production of this podcast and helps us reach our goal of supporting 1 million food founders. As a member, you'll get access to our live coaching events, have your brand featured right here on the podcast, be the first to test our new tools, and receive a 10% discount on all of our tools and services when you choose an annual plan. Join fellow successful founders at thegoodfoodcfo.com/Baba Yacht. That's spelled BABOYOT. Together, we're changing the way that food business is done. Now, back to the show. Ariane, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. I need to share with you right off the bat that I'm a former customer of D'Artagnan.
Former?
Well, because before I started doing what I do now, which is financial consulting for sustainable food businesses, I was a food sourcing manager for a large catering company in Los Angeles. So I was responsible for traveling to farms and finding the best of the best ingredients, making seasonal menus, all those beautiful things. I had such a fun job. But whenever we needed duck or foie gras, there was only one place that I was allowed to go, and I was introduced to D'Artagnan, and by that you. And so you were a great resource for us then. So thank you for that. And it's quite a pleasure to meet you 10 years later.
Good. But does that mean you don't eat duck anymore? Is that what
I absolutely eat duck still. I just don't buy it in the quantities that I used to. And yeah. But I want to talk about, your roots in the food industry. It starts with your father, from what I understand, a Michelin-starred chef. Can you tell us a little bit about him and then your journey to starting your food business?
We're counting 7 generations behind me. My father, his parents, his grandparents, and in the food business. It started as an inn in a total rural area of France called Gascony, southwest France, where we live to eat. We don't eat to live, we live to eat. In Gascogne, when somebody knocks at the door, you open the door, you don't say hello, you say, have you eaten? That's the first word. It's that kind of a culture. And to eat well, not to eat a lot, just to eat a lot, just to eat well. And because it's a very hilly region, there has always been a lot of polyculture, where the women traditionally would take care of the poultry, the eggs, the gardening, and the men were more in the fields with the big cattle or the big culture in the cereals, sunflowers, corn, wheat, stuff like that, and of course vines, grapes, wine, and Armagnac. Armagnac is the big brandy of Gascogne. I was raised in that environment where everybody in the family was in the food business, whether it's in the wine or in the farming or in the restaurant business. And all around, my childhood friends were the daughters and the sons of other restaurateurs of the region. So we ate very, very well. We were spoiled and had the best ingredients. My father had a list of small farmers who would come every day, deliver small quantities of things to him, and that he ordered or that he didn't order, but that was ready or ripe, or that they caught in the woods, mushrooms or a wild boar or something, and they would bring it, and of course he would take it and we would take care of it. And so from very, very young, I was in that environment. Helping, the business was a small hotel restaurant, 32 rooms, and the restaurant who got 1 star and then 2 stars, Michelin stars. And so with my brother, and then after that my little sister, but she was much younger, but with my brother, who was 1 year younger, we always had to help, after homework or during vacation or on the weekends. We would help where was needed. Except I was helping where was needed. He had clearly a path of kind of an internship where he would learn every facet of the business. It was clear from the beginning, it was never said loudly, but it was clear that he was going to take over, not me. And I was the eldest, but on the other side, at that time, the women would find a husband and follow the husband. And so it was more secure for a family with a business to bet on the son rather than the daughter. And I think this is key to what happened to me, because somewhere it didn't sit well with me, somewhere subjectively and unconsciously, and I always wanted to show my parents, my father in particular, but the whole family, that I was worth something, that I could do something on my own. And that's how I decided to cross the pond, go to America, and make my life here. Also, my father was very important in the food industry in France, and he was very well known, and I didn't want him to put me in a situation where people would say, oh yeah, she's there, but that's because her father had networking. And so I arrived here in 1977 as an au pair in Greenwich, Connecticut. During the school year, I became also assistant teacher at the Greenwich High of the French teacher. And he's the one, and the whole community around him, who helped me pass the SAT and the TOEFL, which are the exams to be able to go to university. I was accepted at Barnard College, and with the idea of becoming a journalist. I always loved to write, and I didn't doubt of anything, except I was not that good in English, and to write in English would have been another challenge. However, the challenge didn't come because I dropped out of Barnard College in the second year. I ran out of money. My parents, in France, in Europe in general, you don't pay for your studies, for education. It's free. I mean, it's free. Of course, you pay your taxes, but it comes free. And so they didn't understand the cost of the whole thing here. So
me either.
So that's another podcast, I'm sure. I had found a couple of part-time jobs, so that was nice, but not enough to be able to pay the tuition of the next year. And one of those part-time jobs was being at the store, manager of the store of a charcuterie, a deli, a French deli called the Three Little Pigs, Les Trois Petits Cochons. That was the first French charcuterie or deli in, I don't know in America, but certainly in New York on 13th Street. And so from there, that summer, my bosses, they were two partners, they asked me if I wanted to stay full time, and they would take care of the lawyer to transfer my visa from student to a work permit and to eventually a green card. I was only too happy to say yes, because I was in my element, food. I knew what I was talking about. It was a time when, with the French accent, people in front of you would think that you know better about food than they do. And I couldn't follow the studies anyway. So it was perfect. So I stayed there. Very fast, I wanted to develop the wholesale side of the business. It was only a retail store. So we started that, and that went pretty well. And for 5 years, everything was fine. And then one day, two guys came with a foie gras in their hands. The liver of the duck or goose that has been really fed, specially fed to get that big liver, which is a huge delicacy in Gascony. It's our specialty. Everybody loves foie gras. That's any special occasion or no occasion at all, that's what we eat. And so I saw that with really big eyes. I mean, it had been 6 years since I hadn't come home, And that was the first foie gras in America. It was historical, you know, it was really cool. I tried to convince my bosses to get into that business. They didn't want to, they refused. And so I left and started D'Artagnan with a partner at the time. He was a good friend who I had met at International House, the dormitory of Columbia University. He had joined me at the Three Pigs for 3 years before that. And so it was time for us, you know, we were young, we didn't have any responsibilities, no families. So we decided, okay, it's time, let's go and do our own thing. And so we started D'Artagnan. We had $7,500 each. I had that as a saving. He borrowed that from his mother. So $15,000 to start. The day we opened, we had $30 left in the bank account. You know, between the deposit for the phone, the deposit for the first leasing of the refrigerator truck, the rent, the 2 months rent. And at that time, no, I mean, we're talking about 1985. So no internet, no crowdfunding. For me, no way to call the parents. So we basically, we ate our samples for a full year without paying ourselves a salary. But two, we grew really, really fast. So we had cash flow issues instantly because the farmers needed to be paid very fast. And the restaurateurs notoriously pay you in 30 days, which means 45. If that, you know. So,
yeah. May I ask you a couple questions about what it was like when you started? So it sounds like, I know you had partner farms that you worked with, but was that the case in the first days of the business as well? Like were you raising animals?
No, we never raised animals ourselves. We had that relationship with this duck farm and the foie gras, and we were promoting all the little different parts of the duck, prepared or raw. You know, we didn't have a USDA establishment, but there was a guy who we had met by chance who had a place called Mexi Frost, and he was doing chimichangas and stuff like that for the army. It was a USDA place, inspected establishment, and he gave us his lunchtime every day. The 2 hours of lunchtime in the middle, he gave them to us with all the equipment for free.
Wow.
He said something to me that I'm now repeating nonstop, which is, when I arrived, somebody helped me. Now it's my turn. And that's what I'm doing today. When I arrived, somebody helped me. Now it's my turn. And there were a lot of helping hands like that. I remember a chef from Robert Mézin from La Crémaillère in Westchester County who gave me a check of $1,000, even though he didn't need to order anything. I said, "Well, what do you need for next week?" No, just put it on my account. My sous chef will call you with an order. Stuff like that, you know. And that's, for me today, that is America. That totally represents what America is all about.
I have a couple more questions because so many of the listeners of the podcast are starting businesses. They're in the very early stages. And so you mentioned a couple things that are interesting to me. So one is you had partners meaning, you know, the farmers and those who were raising the duck and the potentially the goose, right? And then it sounds like you were making the product, you were processing the animals, it sounds like.
Well, not killing the slaughterhouse.
Right, but
on the duck and foie gras, the slaughterhouse was at the farm. But very, very rapidly, we had other relationships with other farmers. We saw that we couldn't survive just on duck. So we went to look for good chickens in Amish County, you know, Berks County, Lancaster County, venison, wild boar, quail in the Carolinas, rabbit. I mean, we wanted to specialize in meat protein, but the good ones, raised the right way, but not just duck. I mean, we couldn't.
What I'm hearing there too is like you were offering product that wasn't super mainstream. It's like you couldn't go to the grocery store, certainly, and get a lot of that product. And even as a restaurateur, I mean, I was doing food buying a decade ago, 10 years ago, and there was limited resources for high quality product like you were producing and aggregating in, you said, 1985. So that's
people
amazing.
called it exotic. I hated that word, because to me it was not exotic. I mean, rabbit, quail, pheasant, squab, those are things that in Gascogne are at the everyday table.
Yeah.
But here it was called exotic, which put us in a corner and in a niche that was a little bit too niche for me. So I tried to get out of that exotic thing. But they were farmers for rabbits. They were farmers for squab. I mean, they were there and they were just very, very small.
Yeah. And so many founders who are creating, we've got founders who are, from Finland, and they're importing wild, berries and using them in product. And I mean, that's just like one example of many things that are maybe not exotic, that's not the word that is used now, but like unique and misunderstood, unknown. Right. And it's a big hurdle for people to get over. So I'm curious, how did you get out of that sort of exotic niche?
With the retailers, never. With the consumers, it took a long time. With the restaurants and the chefs in the restaurants, it was very easy because we arrived at the right time, at the right place. They came out of the Culinary Institute of America, Johnson and Wales, French Culinary Institute, Peter Kump School. They were, for the first time, you had chefs who wanted to shine with new ingredients, but quality ingredients. And they didn't want to stay in the basement anymore, like glorified dishwashers. They wanted to be in the dining room, showing their creativity through really good ingredients. And so, I mean, I have formed friendships from that time that are still today, with the likes of Tom Colicchio, Thomas Keller, Daniel Boulou, Eric Ripper, Danny Meyer. We all started, Charlie Palmer, we all started in the same time. David Burke, all those guys.
Yeah, really amazing. So you found your core customer, and you had an audience to speak to, and sort of, it sounds like, the others sort of came along. You have that influence, right? As more as those chefs start
and vice
using
versa,
the product.
they pushed us. They wanted better and better. Your chicken is 50 days old. Can't I have a chicken, a 90 days old chicken like in France? Could I have a chicken that really eats a variety of food instead of just they pushed us to innovate and to get better and better.
I love that. And then the last thing I want to take a moment to talk about here was your mention of cash flow, because that's another thing, right? That so many founders deal with today as well. You've got, in order to buy your product, you have to pay often right away, whether it's ingredients or, the core, packaging, whatever. And whomever you're selling it to has 30 days. Sometimes they have 90 days, which is absolutely insane. But growth is often a major cause of cash flow problems. So how did you deal with it?
It was very difficult the first 10 years, really difficult, because we were always juggling like that. And I think it's a mix of things where, one, you beg. Two, please pay me on time. Please pay me COD. Two, you entice. You say, hey, if you pay me COD, I give you a little discount. Three, you go see your bank. But the banks, when you deal with such high perishability, they are not very. They're gonna give you a little bit of cash flow, but they're gonna limit it to your inventory, as long as it's, and not 100% of the inventory, because they know how perishable it is, and a percentage of the receivables. So they will. And I think the trick with the banks is to go see a bank of your size, which means a small one at the beginning. And as you grow, you have to change banks to be able to get a bigger line of credit. And really pay on time all the time, and if possible even before it's due, so they see that you're serious, and so you can grow like that little by little the relationship with the bank. I mean, that's primordial. That's something that you need to do regardless. And even I think if you're successful in getting all your clients to pay on time, it's always good to have a good relationship with the bank. Always.
I agree. I love your advice about the bank size too,
Yeah.
and matching that.
Yeah.
That's smart. Yeah. Okay. So I detoured us a little bit, but I'm so glad I did, because I think that was really interesting to chat about. So let's maybe say, like, okay, we're 10 years in, cash flow was tight for 10 years. Do things change after 10 years? Does the model change? Like what else should we know about the years at
No,
D'Artagnan?
it's a mixture of we started to grow, we started to have a little better terms with some of the farmers who were a little bigger. We started to have a better relationship with some of the bank. And we were very, very strict on the payments. I mean, I had an account receivable manager who was an ogre, He was and because our reputation grew, I mean, it grew really fast, the reputation. We had to actually control our growth, because we didn't want the farmers and the ranchers to compromise the quality of the animals. And so, depending on their size, they had a max quantity that they could do, without compromising the quantity. We absolutely wanted pastured animals, no antibiotics, no growth hormones, growing the right way without stress. And for that, you need a lot of space. So because of that, we couldn't grow that fast. And I wanted to stay specialized. I didn't want to go into fish, cheese, chocolate, all that stuff. I wanted people to respect us for what we were doing, and I wanted to have a handle on the quality control that we could do. And so because of that, we couldn't say yes to all the clients. And that helped also on the receivables, So
Yeah. I think this is another great spot to pause, because we talk about that a lot here too. Like, that saying yes is not always the best thing to do, especially when it can stress your cash flow, can stress your supply chain, might require you to, do I need to give a little bit on my standards that I usually have so that I can generate, I love to hear a founder say, our standards are the most important thing. We're not budging on that. And if we have to say no, that's okay, because it's the right thing for the business. And then also what you're saying about the product line and staying really specialized. I think that's a tip that is really important for founders to hear too, because it can be scary when someone asks you for something and you say, we don't carry that. We don't have that. We don't offer that. People can feel like, oh gosh, should we? Maybe we should do fish. Maybe we should do cheese, So I love that, your proof of success by having, seems like a very clear vision of what
or
you wanted to be
stubborn, I don't know. But it's probably also the reason why, the main reason why we had to split, my partner and I, and that was 20 years into it, in 2005, because he wanted to grow faster. He wanted to start to make serious money. I felt we didn't have the brand recognition yet to do whatever he wanted to do that way. So he wanted to sell the company. I didn't, and I ended up buying him out with something called the shotgun clause. Are you aware of that?
Well, okay, I know what a shotgun wedding is like, very fast. So I'm assuming it's a very quick.
It's not about
down
the
and
speed.
dirty.
It's about
No?
the format. Most of the time when you have two partners, a 50-50 relationship, one partner wants the other one out. Okay? So he puts an offer on the table. The other partner cannot say a flat no. Either you say, yes, I take the money, here is my 50%, or you say, no, it's me. In other words, you reverse the offer. And you reverse the offer with the same offer that the first one put on the table. So it's very good because it makes the business sound and whole. There is no possibility of destroying the business in the process of the dispute. But also, the first to put the offer cannot put too low of an offer, because if the offer is too low, the other one is going to reverse, and that's that. So he has to put a fair offer on the table, which is what George did. He was backed at the time, I didn't know, but he was backed by investment bankers who were going to flip the company after. And so he put the offer on the table, and I was able to reverse it. And that was a little bit miraculous. I went to see a banker from a French bank, CIC, who at the time was here more to support French exporters from France rather than being a commercial bank and helping American companies, which we are. D'Artagnan is an American company. And that man, the director of the bank, Serge Bélanger, I knew because he was the director of the French-American Chamber of Commerce, and they had given me a couple of awards over the years, as a new company, startup, etc. And I really think I was his good deed of his life. He went at bat for me, because George was, he went to Paris. He asked permission to finance the buyout. He got it. So that's how I bought him out, basically. Shotgun close. It's something to remember.
I will. Fascinating. And so then you carried on the business for how many years has it been, did you say?
So this year it's 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And still known for the being of the highest quality and sustainability. So I think it's a amazing that sort of what you founded on is still how the business is seen today, which is really great.
Yes, we haven't compromised. We still follow the same cahier de charge, the same specifications. So granted, today there are much more people who actually grow the right way, animal proteins, but we have a lot of evidence. And I sold the company 3 years ago to an investment group, InvestCorp, through a holding, Fortune International, that had Fortune Fish also. They totally understand the culture, and I think they embrace it. So it's a nice and healthy 40 years, right?
Nice, good. And as I understand it, you are working with your daughter at All for One, One for All farm.
Yes. Well, thank you for mentioning it. This is my new venture. Lots of physical work. I started under the umbrella of a foundation, the D'Artagnan Foundation. I started this farm with Alix, All for One, One for All, in Goshen, New York, 4 years ago now. And it's very small, 14 acres, and we do too many things. But we do them to teach ourselves how to do it, and also to teach the community around us. They come. We have a little eatery where I make food exactly only what we grow. We have a little distillery where we distill and we make liquors with only our plants and our fruits. We planted 2,000 different trees, fruit trees and fodder trees. We have sheep on the cover crop between two rows of trees. After 3 days, we move the sheep, and the chickens and the ducks and the geese come in, disperse the compost, and it's permaculture, agroforestry, pasture rotation, all the buzzwords of today to try to capture carbon and water and health in the soil, so that we don't need any pesticides and fertilizer and all that stuff. And so my favorite part, Alix is really into the farming and the breeding of the sheep. We have 11 baby lamb who were just born between Easter and this week.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm more into the processing, which is the cooking basically, making good stuff with the eggs, with the chickens, with the vegetables, with the fruits, having a full menu like that, and a special every week with the new harvest. And same thing on the distillery side. And we also have some workshops where we actually teach people how to pickle or ferment or cut up a chicken or what have you. Yeah.
Amazing. I love that. It seems so beautiful. I saw a couple of photos online and
you have to come and visit. You have to come and visit.
I will. I'm actually from the East Coast. I live in LA, but I'm from Pennsylvania and I have family in New York. So I might just
next
indeed
time
come
you
and
come,
visit.
bring
Yes.
them. Bring
I
them.
will. Oh my gosh. They're my aunt and my mother are wonderful green thumbs. They got it from my grandparents. They both have beautiful gardens and vegetable gardens and flower gardens. So to come to a farm like yours and your daughters, they would be in heaven. They're those types of people who are always barefoot, like literally they're just always out in the yard doing something. My mom's feet are always dirty. I always make fun of her, but she loves it.
Yeah.
So,
She would love it. We're open to the public every Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So.
Okay. Beautiful. Yeah. Amazing. Well, there's one other thing I want to talk to you about, and that is the germinators, because I know this is something that you're very passionate about and that you're actively working on. There's a mentorship, component to this. Will you tell our listeners a little bit about this project?
This is something I started with that French American Chamber of Commerce. So I'm at the head of the food and beverage committee. And I figure let's do something nice, it's my turn to give. And so we created the Germinators, which is basically a contest between startups in the food and hospitality business, whether American or French, but with some kind of a exchange, some French American or American French something in the company. And so we do once a year, we do an event where we put in the same room a bunch of chefs, clients who do good food, and they take products from the finalists that we have selected. The finalists in questions, the startups with their product or their service, and they show it to the public and they give samples. The audience is mostly investment bankers, venture capitalists, retailers, importers, distributors, press. After everybody has tasted everything, then we sit down and the finalists, the 10, we try to limit it to 10 finalists. They pitch their startup, their company.
Okay.
We have some judges in the front. We ask them a couple of questions. And then at the end, the judges gives the award of the for them the most likely to succeed in the group, and the public does that also. So we always have two winners, except that really they are all winners in that case, because the 10 of them have been exposed to potential clients, potential co-packers, etc. And so it's a great venue, and we try to make it coincide with the Fancy Food Show in New York, because that's when a lot of international people from the industry are in New York. And so, yeah.
Wonderful. Where can people learn more about the Germinators and what you're doing there?
So the website is FACC, like French American Chamber of Commerce, FACC, Germinators, all attached.com.
Okay, perfect. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so people can link to it. Well, wonderful. Is there anything else we should chat about today before we go?
I don't know. I mean, you mentioned that you have people who are starting as listeners. I would like to tell them not to get desperate. I mean, we're in very volatile times right now, but things are going to calm down, and whatever goes up goes down, whatever goes down go back up. I mean, it's in the 40 years of business, I've seen and I know and I am sure that this is life, this is life constantly. So there is a bottom somewhere, and then it's going to rebound.
Yeah.
It's also important to try to see the opportunities when it does go down, because sometimes it's a good way to fix things, maybe look at the expenses a little bit, reinvent yourself. I mean, this happened during COVID. It happened also in 2009 with the financial crisis. I mean, there is always some time in the life when it's going to happen. And so it's important to not panic and to regenerate yourself and your business.
I think that's amazing advice. Thank you for sharing that. I completely agree. It is a little scary and it's, I think, easy to, we had an episode about sheltering in place, sort of like, oh, we just have to make it through this. But I think it can be an opportunity to grow and to change. And I love the advice that you're giving and things to consider.
To differentiate from your competitors. Because remember, at the end of the day, everybody eats. Everybody has to eat.
Yeah. Well, Ariane, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much. We'll put links to your social media because I now follow you on Instagram and to the FACC Germinators website. And I think All for One has a website as well, right, that we can link to?
alloneoneall.org. Yes.
Perfect. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. See you soon at the farm.
Amazing.
Looking for more content like this? Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll see weekly podcast episodes as well as other content related to the show. Just visit youtube.com/@thegoodfoodcfo.
Thank you for joining us here today. If you enjoyed this episode or found it helpful or inspiring in any way, please share it with your founder friends on social and rate and review the podcast wherever you listen. It's the #1 way to help good food founders find the show. We'll be back with a brand new episode next week.